Hi, everybody. My name is Olivia Mattis. I'm so delighted that you've joined us here today. I'm president of the Sousa Mendes Foundation, and for the past 3 years or so, we have been presenting stories pretty much every Sunday on typically positive, inspirational rescue and resistance efforts that happened during World War II. Today's program is quite a departure from that. We're focusing not on a hero, but on a scoundrel. And we are talking today about Kurt Waldheim, who had a fascinating and I would say unique career trajectory. So in 1986, he was publicly accused of having committed war crimes. And here he had been Secretary General of the United Nations, and he was a candidate for the presidency of Austria. And suddenly his past opened up in a way that was very uncomfortable for him, and that was documented by our filmmaker today, Ruth Beckermann. She was there with her handheld camera, and then years later, she made this very important, provocative film, the Waldheim Waltz. So today you'll hear from the filmmaker, who will be in dialogue with my good friend, Dr. Shulamit Reinhardt, who is a professor emeritus at Brandeis University. And you will also hear from a young man that I work with every day. His name is Valentin Hassler, and he is an intern here at the Sousa Mendes Foundation, sent by Austria under their program called Austrian Service Abroad, that came out of the whole Waldheim affair. And I think you will really enjoy meeting him. So without further ado, I will give the floor to Shulamit, who will then introduce our first guest.
I agree with you. This is an amazing story, and it's certainly not about rescue, but it might be about another good word, which is restitution or re-examination. All those things have to happen. And that is one of the things that our marvelous speaker, Ruth Beckermann, has so much experience with. Thank you, Ruth, for joining us in early evening Vienna. The series,
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Ruth is a very special, very modern artist. She's a multidisciplinary artist. She works in film, video, political activism, political art, and book writing, and maybe more. Any one of those would be enough for most people. Today, we will focus on Ruth's work concerning Kurt Waldheim. That is not the only topic that she has dealt with. One of her latest deals with sexism, where she changes the roles of Johns and prostitutes. Today, we're going to focus on Ruth's work concerning Kurt Waldheim and the film that she made about him, called the Waldheim Waltz. There is no such thing, but it is a mockery of what he did. He waltzed around the truth. Her film, as you probably have read, appeared in 2018 and won many awards. Ruth was born in Vienna and has also lived in other countries, Israel, France, and the United States, which gives her a very international outlook. And she lives and works as an author and filmmaker currently in Vienna and Paris. Ruth, before we start the examination of the slides that we have selected together that tell the story of your work, could you just tell us briefly when you started and what motivated you to make this film?
Well, as you said, I've been present at the time in 1986 when the election campaign took place, and I had a video camera with me, one of those early cameras which recorded black and white and on tapes, like
it was very heavy, right?
It was quite heavy. And so I was there and I recorded not too much, Today, I would say it would have been better to record more, but I never thought of using this material in a film. Actually, I did a recording because to document our small group of people who stood up against Waldheim. In the beginning, we were not more than 15, 20 people. Only later on, we became a big group of people. So, and we were not present in the official media, not at all, because all of Austria, meaning the media and the people, stood behind Waldheim, and there was this patriotic,
Patriarchal.
yeah, of defending our country, and Austria is slandered and so on. So we were treated like traitors and didn't appear in the official media. That's why I thought it would be important to document that there were also other voices. That was the why I shot this material. And only many, many years later, I watched it actually with my son, who was maybe 20 at the time, and a friend of his. I don't know, I took out the CD and we watched it, just the unedited material, and both boys said, hey, this is so interesting. And they compared Waldheim to Mr. Nixon, because they said this is really the story of a liar, someone who lied about his past.
You wouldn't limit it to Nixon, though. We have plenty of other presidents to give you, in addition.
Yeah, yeah. At the time there was no Trump, but so he thought of Watergate, so they mentioned Nixon, and they said, it's so interesting, make something out of it. And actually, I was quite reluctant, because I said, why should I make a film? I know everything, I've been there, so it's boring to me. But slowly but surely, I thought it would be interesting for me and myself to look into the international material. Because of course I knew the Austrian articles and TV shows and so on, but there were so many TV stations in Vienna at the time. The US, the Britons, the French, even some Russians and so on. So I thought I want to put this affair in an international context.
Can we stop there for a second? You are such a great interviewee. I only have to ask you one question, and then I could just sit back and enjoy.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Here. So let's look at the material with which you were so familiar. Let's look at the first slide. The first slide shows 3 images of the very tall, very long-fingered Kurt Waldheim. Montenegro in 1943, in that famous picture, when he became Secretary General, which is so ironic for the 9 years. And then when he's a presidential campaign, the time in which Ruth made the film that she didn't think would be so important. We want to tell you what the area is that we're talking about. If you're European, you might know where all of these places are, but just in case you don't. In the bottom right, you see Greece and Salonika. Salonika is the second largest city of Greece, the first being Athens, and it was the home of Sephardi Jews. I have 2 relatives who lost there, which is not important of their mind, but there were just lots of these people, and they were workers. They were not intellectuals. They were stevedores working in the port, and very famous for that, very strong. And then we go north to Montenegro, and the picture that we just saw came from Montenegro. And then you go north further, could have the next slide be north of Montenegro to Slovakia. And so we see what I wanted to have you see, is how big this area was. It was a massacre, a elimination of an enormous area in which Kurt Waldheim was concerned. Do you have anything to say about that, Ruth, before we move on?
No, thank you.
Next slide, please. Here is the man to which much credit should be given, Hubertus Czernin, who is an Austrian journalist, was an Austrian journalist, who broke the story of Kurt Waldheim. It's interesting that it was an Austrian who did this and not an investigative like from Interpol or some other organization. Do you want to add anything to our understanding of Hubertus Czernin?
Well, Hubertus was a very honest and interesting man. He comes from an old aristocratic Austrian family, and most of the Austrian aristocrats have been not against the Nazis or even Nazis, but some families have been quite opposing them or even emigrated. So he comes from one of those families, and he got interested in the whole subject of art restitution or art robbery by the Nazis, let's say. And he was also reporting a lot about the Klimt pictures, you know, the Altmann case. And somehow he became interested in Waldheim, and he just went to the official documentation, to our official archive, like the National Archive, and asked for the file of Mr. Kurt Waldheim. And he found documents which said that he was part of the SS horse, how do you call it? Horse riders, before the war already, and another document. So Waldheim was so sure of himself that he didn't even make those documents disappear. So just like that, Czernin started his research by finding these documents, and then continued, of course.
So he didn't do like Trump and bring the archives to his house to take care of them. Another sign of stupidity. So we have a lot to learn from Hubertus Czernin about speaking truth to power, and not assuming also that people of the upper classes will always identify with the dictators. Here's, I think, a very dramatic photograph of three people, three Jewish men who were part of the World Jewish Congress, who followed, is that true? Followed Czernin and looked for more evidence, which they found and displayed. The World Jewish Congress frequently gets a lot of credit for outing Waldheim, which is another reason to also remember Czernin. Would you like to add anything about this?
No, this was, of course, very important that they brought this up. I mean, if it would have been only in Austria, the case wouldn't have this resonance. And it was important to have the international resonance to continue doing research and discussing the subject even after he was elected.
Right. And that kind of effort is still going on. This is a slide of the Jews of Salonika. We mentioned earlier that it's the second largest city in Greece. And these are, I would guess, very poor Jewish men standing in front of all sorts of soldiers, policemen, some of them Greek, some of them German, some of them Austrian, who are smiling at the terrible conditions of these individuals, these Jewish men. Some, they don't have belts on, they have ropes holding their pants up, and they're about to be deported and murdered. I think it's 90% of the Jews of Salonika were killed. And these are, to talk about class, those I would say would be working class. And here you have what I would think are middle-class men in, I think these are nice suits, not prison uniforms. And they are being tortured by being forced to carry out these calisthenics, which was a very common practice of Nazis from whatever country.
Yeah.
And here we have the murder of the Jews of Slovakia and the Balkans. On the right is a horse. I don't know if you can see the head, who must be pulling lots of maybe children or other people to this site. And this is a train, I think, moving forward. Ruth made the point to me that this picture could have any title. It could be Murder of the Jews of ... because this was ubiquitous throughout Europe. Next slide, please. This is such an important picture that I would like to just hand it over to Ruth. You can't see her, but we think that she's the second from the right. Could you tell people what this is? I know that it's part of the film, but it would be nice to hear from you.
This was a press conference in Vienna by held or organized by the Conservative Party, the party who supported Waldheim for presidency. And they had asked other men who have been in the war or in the who lived through these times to speak up for Waldheim, saying that he was just an interpreter, that he didn't know anything, and so on, and that he's such an honorable man, and so on. So our group met the evening before, and we painted this, or wrote these posters by hand, as you see. And we met before this press conference, and some of us had press cards, press documents to get in as journalists. And we, of course, we had hidden those posters. And at a certain moment, with a sign from one of us, we went, of course, we've been standing in the back. There were journalists from all over the world sitting there. So we had the good idea to go, not unfold our posters in the back, but go and stand behind those participants and enroll them there to be on camera during the whole press conference, because nobody dared to throw us out. So we stood there. It was quite long time to hold those posters. And this was quite a success because, of course, this image or parts of this press conference on video have been on many TV stations in Europe.
So the people sitting down were standing behind Waldheim.
Yes.
I'm just going to make a joke. And the people with the posters were standing behind the people who were standing behind Waldheim.
Yeah, exactly.
And sort of X them out. Very good drama, political activism at its best. And it's being filmed, which is also fabulous. Here we have Tom Lantos, a Jewish Holocaust survivor and Democrat for representing California in the House of Representatives, an outspoken man, a man who took on the Waldheim case. And the next slide is Elizabeth Holtzman, a Democrat from New York. And this slide shows that the outrage that Lantos had was joined by Elizabeth Holtzman's great political savvy. And she had a bill that was introduced and passed that would forbid the United States from allowing people who were Nazis to come into the United States. And this was done when Waldheim has already become the president of Austria. And so we had a president who couldn't come into the United States, and he became a political pariah, I would say. Would you agree?
Yes, sure.
And so it was a continuous embarrassment, and he didn't really benefit or enjoy, I think, being president at that time because of his new reputation. Let's move on, please. So we have political action, we have political drama, all forms of resistance. And now we have art. And this is a 4-section memorial against fascism done by Alfred Hrdlicka, and it is located in the Albertinaplatz in Vienna. There's so much to say about this that I won't say anything. But why don't you, Ruth, mention a few things that you think it's important for our viewers to see or to know?
Well, this monument was erected, as you see, 2 years after the election of Kurt Waldheim. And this year, 1988, was special anyway, because it was 50 years after 1938, when the Anschluss happened. And so all the Austria was still in the light, how do you say, in the
Denial mode?
No, these discussions had started, but Austria had felt, the official politicians, they felt that they had to do something to erase the shame of Waldheim's election, at least in a cosmetic, to do some makeup, yeah.
So I want to interrupt you here. This is a 4-part, and all the parts have very interesting meaning. And you see the little gray thing in the middle, that is a Jew who is being forced to clean the streets of Vienna before the arrival of Hitler. And on him is a barbed wire, actually, or some sculptural representation, because people were sitting on it and probably fooling around and disgracing it. So here that was prevented. Let's move on, please, because I want to get to 2 other works of art. This is not by Ruth, it is by Rachel Whiteread. I've seen it, and it's in the area where Jews lived and where there's still a major synagogue today. It's in the Judenplatz. And one of my favorite sculptures. It's a room you cannot enter and a room you cannot leave. It's symbolic of burning books. It's symbolic of Nazism and fascism and the destruction of knowledge and truth. Let's move on. And here we have in our final 2 slides, the wonderful work, once again, of Ruth Beckermann. She took video and placed it at the foot of the large sculpture. And by doing so, sort of changed its meaning and made a different meaning become clear. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I added the missing image. The installation is called The Missing Image because you have this sculpture representing a Jew cleaning the floor, cleaning the
Street.
And what was missing were the people standing around and laughing at him and being happy that the Jews are humiliated. And we have quite a lot of photographs of this street washing, which happened in different parts of Vienna. But we never had a video. And all of a sudden, a video was discovered of I think 11 seconds, was discovered in a film archive. And when I saw this video, I knew I wanted to put this confronting the Jew on the floor with the perpetrators around. So I made a loop and worked on the images of the video and got the permission to do this installation in the center of Vienna.
We have 2 minutes to show the video. We are running about 2 minutes beyond where we should be, but the video will be seen. Ruth, that is so powerful. I thought the music was El Rachamim, which is a Jewish memorial.
It's the music, or the sound is done by Olga Neuwirth, a very famous composer. And she took actually a prayer and a Kaddish on the cemetery and changed it, worked on it, and made sound, which accompanied the images.
If you had just made that film, you would have deserved all the credits that you've been getting for your work. Thank you so much. And now I want to turn the microphone back to Olivia, who's going to introduce our next guest.
Thank you, Shula, and thank you, Ruth. And I'm sure that people have a lot of questions, so please do continue putting your questions into the chat box. Shulamit will be gathering those questions and will be asking them of our speakers later in the program. So right now, it's my pleasure to introduce to you my dear colleague, Valentin Hassler, who has been working with the Sousa Mendes Foundation since September. So he will tell you about the organization that sends Austrian young people abroad to work in Holocaust education. And we now have this wonderful partnership with this organization in Austria. And so Valentin is with us for 10 months. And then we'll have another Austrian intern with us next year and the years to follow. So Valentin has just finished high school. He's a year or just a few months out of high school. He hasn't yet begun university. He will be studying law at the University of Vienna, and he has a bright future ahead. Right now, Valentin, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Olivia. And thank you, Shula and Ruth, for the great talk you just had. So let me introduce myself again. My name is Valentin Hassler. I'm from Vienna, Austria, and I have the honor to represent two organizations, the Sousa Mendes Foundation and the Austrian Service Abroad. As you can see here on the left, it's the logo of the Austrian Service Abroad is shown. And I will go now into the work of the Austrian Service Abroad, but as you already can see here, our main focus is on remembrance, memoria, misericordia, social work, and peace service. So the Austrian Service Abroad has partner organizations all over the world, and the Austrian Service Abroad sends young Austrians to those partner organizations, and the young Austrians, the volunteers, worked there for 10 months on different topics. As you can see here, our three areas are memorial, social service, and peace. And here in the card, you can also see the three colors of those services. And also the Susan Mendes Foundation is marked at where New York is. And most of our partner organizations are in Europe, in Israel, and in the US. But we are spread on every continent, and yeah, that's our honor.
Valentin, it's not clear what the colors refer to, unless it's just my screen.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The red dots on the map are memorial service. The green ones are social service, and the blue ones are the partner organizations in peace service. Thank you. So let me go through the three different services. The first one is memorial service, which has the focus on remembrance and Holocaust education. And as you can see here on the picture, one of our volunteers is pictured with a Holocaust survivor. So it's also our honor to interview and count experts and Holocaust survivors, and also their children and grandchildren today. And yeah, and I will talk about that later, but the Austrian service abroad was firstly only memorial service, because that is our main focus, to restore the image of Austria. And yeah, I will go through that later. So the next one is social service, where we focus more on helping for children, elderly people, and women in third world countries. So young Austrians, as I am, which are around 18 years old, travel around the world and help projects like you can see here, the Banga project in Uganda, where they build a school, teach English, teach music, teach art, teach history, and give people who can provide themselves as many support as they can. For example, we built also hospitals, but also water lines and renewable energy systems. And lastly, I wanted the last service is peace service. Peace service works with organizations which try to provide and keep peace across the globe. As you can see here in the picture, one of our volunteers is shown with the director of the John Rabe Research and Exchange Center for Peace and Reconciliation in Nanking, China. It's one of our partner organizations, but that we work with. But the United Nations and the International Peace Corps are one of our biggest partners. And yeah, and nextly, I want to talk about what I'm doing right now at the Susan Mendes Foundation, and what inspired myself to do the job that I'm doing. So when I studied in school and the whole Holocaust topic came up, it was very interesting for me to speak with Holocaust survivors directly. There aren't many anymore in Austria, but in Israel and in the United States, especially in New York, many of them are able to live a happy life there. So my goal was to go abroad and meet as many people that used to live where I grew up, and speak with them directly. And yeah, so that's why after searching for our organization, I came to the Susan Mendes Foundation, because it focuses on educating as many people as they can to look at the bright side of or at the bright stories in the Holocaust, that even in the most darkest times, good can be done, as from our hero Aristides de Sousa Mendes. And my work here at the Sousa Mendes Foundation is also mostly on those meetings, as we just are right now where I try to support the speakers wherever I can with PowerPoints, and also you, the audience, give you the best experience as you can. If you have questions or whatever, I will put them in the link. So in future programs, I hope I will see you all, and you can gladly say hi. I will be honored. So another work at the Sousa Mendes Foundation is at the archive, where sort new entries and all the artifacts we have, the passports, the visas and whatnot, so that researchers, historians, and also relatives from Holocaust survivors can easily search and find the objects they want to see. So and the last thing that I work for is at the Sousa Mendes Foundation is I translate, of course, because I speak fluently German. That's where I grew up in Vienna, and I also translated the comic book, the graphic novel of Sousa Mendes, so that more young Austrian and Germans can read and know about our great hero Aristides de Sousa Mendes. So what have I learned so far? I mean, for me, as I already said, it was my biggest reason was to meet as many Holocaust survivors as I could. And so for me, it was a great honor to meet Mike Stolowiski, who was on one of our recent programs, who fled with his nanny Poland when he was very young and lost his whole family and began a new life in the US. And I mean, it's great to have somebody like that and still be able to have such a great humor and be such a great guy. I met with him twice. We went for lunch. It was a great time. And I mean, to really hear the stories directly from somebody is a great opportunity, which I'm also thankful to have those programs where I can interact with experts and Holocaust survivors directly. So
thank you so much.
Yeah.
I think there's one more slide, right?
No, I just wanted to finish off with the Waldheim affair, which we are here for, and what it changed, I think, for young Austrians, and why what came out of it. I would say that the Austrian Service Abroad, which is trying to educate as many people and also to have a big exchange worldwide about Holocaust and about Holocaust education, came out of it. And many other initiatives really showed up because people started asking questions after the Waldheim affair, and many asked their parents what they have done, what the grandparents have done during those times. And of course, many of them participated actively in the Holocaust or were supporters of the Nazi regime. So it is in our need to do and to work for a brighter world without anti-Semitism and racism, which the Austrian Service Abroad stands for. So thank you very much.
And
Thank you.
let's see that final slide, because that's so
wonderful. For sure. And I want to just show you the street in Austria, which is named after Sousa Mendes. We have that very often, that street names are named after heroes in the Holocaust or victims of the Holocaust, so that in our daily life we could remember our heroes. And here you can see me, as I said, with the Aristides de Sousa Mendes promenade in Vienna, Austria.
Well, I think we can all be very proud of you. And it's very interesting. You also said that when you talked to us beforehand, that the organization that Valentin is part of is funded by the students. and organized by the students. And
Yeah.
he would like to see some change where the Austrian government would also participate. We can't do a fundraiser for you right now, but I just wanted to make that point and give the microphone, so to speak, to Olivia.
Thank you very
Great. Yeah, thanks, Valentine. What a great job you just did. I'm so proud of you. So let me tell you, the audience, a little bit about our upcoming programs. And then we will go to the audience questions. So we have 3 very interesting upcoming programs. Next week, we have a program called the Freedom Line, which looks at France. And in France, there was a whole rescue effort which involved pilots that had been shot down by the German occupiers. And so here were these Allied pilots who were stuck in France, and there was a whole network to rescue them called the Comet Line. And so there's a book about it called The Freedom Line. We have the author and another expert on the story, and it's quite a page turner. You'll want to run out and buy the book as soon as you see the program. It's a free program. I really urge everybody to sign up. The following week, we have Judd Newborn here to present his dramatic and passionate tale on the very important Jewish figure of Shmuel Artur Ziegelboim. Ziegelboim was somebody who had intimate contact with, he was the one Jewish representative in the Polish government in exile. Jan Karski from the Polish underground came and saw Ziegelboim in London. Ziegelboim had an important report. He tried to get to the Allies to tell them what was going on to the Jews of Poland. He's a really central and important figure that people have not heard of, but you will have heard of him if you come to our program. So in 2 weeks' time, we have a film made in Poland. It has English subtitles. It's never before been shown in the United States. So this is really your opportunity. And Judd Newborn is the world's leading authority on this figure, and you definitely will not want to miss it. We are asking for donations for tickets for that program, but we do have a generous sponsor couple, Mimi and Marvin Sandler, who are making it possible for anybody who needs a ticket to come free of charge. So you have no excuse. I want a nice big audience at that program. So either get your own ticket or ask us for a ticket. Just send us an email saying need a ticket, and we will be sure that you get in. 3 weeks from now, you will see Shulamit Reinhartz again in a program not about Austria, but about Germany. And there we're looking at what efforts are going on today in Germany in terms of Holocaust remembrance. And you might be surprised by what you learn. So those are the programs to come. You'll get an email later today with all the information about how to sign up. And right now, I turn the floor back to Shulamit.
Hi, and thank you. So we received here a lot of questions, and I'm going to try to steer them to either Valentine or Bruce. Bruce, did Kreisky revise his assessment of Waldheim once the document surfaced?
Yes, he did. I mean, Kreisky was one of those people who had suggested Waldheim to the UN because of their joint interest in Middle East politics. And he had revised his assessment on Waldheim. And it's in the film even, no?
And is it the case that Austrian people in general have revised their assessment, or what is their assessment today, would you say?
Today, I think people speak very negatively about him. already the next generation and the young people, they can't understand the whole situation anymore. I mean, fortunately, times changed a lot, and those people saying anti-Semitic things in the streets, this wouldn't happen today.
Not at all, really?
Yeah,
Not-
not at all, because it happens on the social media.
So they
so-
don't have to go to the streets.
That's true, but I think it wouldn't happen that much, because this generation of former Nazis and soldiers is not here anymore. So, and certainly not in the streets if they are still alive. And people changed. I mean, there were so many discussions. There's so much commemoration today, and so many books were published and films made. I mean, this is, I think this is done.
It's behind us. Would you say that young people are more like Valentine?
No.
Not that good, right?
Valentine is special, of course. No, I mean, of course, only a minority of young people is interested in history and in the Holocaust. But why should they be interested in the Holocaust? I mean, I'm happy if they are not anti-Semites and not racists and good people. So not everybody has to become a Valentine. We need also people who are interested in other topics.
Sure. A question about your filmmaking choices from Susan and Alfred Feingold. Why is there so little film footage of the Saloniki deportation of Jews in your film?
Well, I mean, the film is about so many different subjects and topics that I thought that was enough. And I think this man who tells on the train station, who tells the story, and the photographs are very strong and powerful. So, I mean,
These are artistic choices.
of course, I mean, one could make a whole film about Salonika, and maybe there is one, I don't know. But I wanted, my film is more an analysis.
Analysis.
So that's why I didn't want to go into any of those different subjects in a very long and broad way.
So here's a question for Valentine. You're not off the hook here. Somebody says to you, the person is Robin. Val, you are an incredible young man. Don't take this too seriously. By any chance, did you see the Tom Stoppard play Leopoldstadt? And what did you think about the history of this Viennese Jewish family?
Oh, unfortunately, I haven't gone yet, but I heard great things about it. My roommate did go, and I mean, the way it portrays the time, the Jewish family over time, was great. He was very inspired, and I think I should watch it, of course.
Definitely. Maybe take somebody like Olivia. Did you see it, Olivia?
Not yet, no.
Well, the two of you should go. Okay. And then from I think this is an error, but somebody says, why is your program, Valentine, only for students to go abroad? Isn't it important to do memorializing in Austria?
Yeah, I mean, for some part, the one part is going abroad, but we also come back at one time. And then we, most of us are going into schools and trying to get as many other young Austrians to also join the program and to also get abroad. And, you know, the exchange overall, it benefits everyone. You know, the students learn languages, learn new cultures, and bring back all those stories and from the people they met. So I think that's also a part of our program.
You know what it makes me think too, that these as older people should allow younger people to design the programs that make sense to them. why should we tell them exactly how to memorialize? We do our own memorialization and they should have freedom.
I think that's very important. I just want to add that there's also other ways to not go to serve in the army, but to do what we call civil service. And many young people go and work in Austrian archives or do research about the Holocaust. You can do it in Austria. It's just another program.
First you call Ruth and then you do your work. Somebody asked, Violet Zeitlin, to you, Ruth, how much did Waldheim influence the anti-Israel atmosphere and resolutions at the UN during his tenure?
It's a good question, but it's very difficult to answer this question. I think one of the reasons for the World Jewish Congress to attack him, let's say, or to bring out, after so many years after his service at the UN, talk about his past, was his critical perception of Israel, or even we could call it his anti-Israel influence. I mean, the General Secretary of the UN doesn't have enormous power because all the different countries vote and have their opinions. But he was a friend of the Arab countries, that was for sure. And as you saw in the film, I mean, when he was in power, there was Arafat speaking there, and there was this resolution comparing Zionism to racism. So, yeah, the World Jewish Congress was not a friend of his politics.
And I don't remember if this is in the film, but how did he become the UN Secretary, just Secretary General in the first place? How did he acquire that respect?
He was some countries proposed some different people, and you know how it is, there's always a compromise. And as he came from a neutral country, Austria, and he had supporters at the UN, and Kreisky suggested him, so he was elected. And what is interesting, we don't have all the documents yet. We hope that one day we will know more about the politics of the UN, right, and what they knew and what they didn't know. What we know is that his closest collaborator came from Yugoslavia, and it was in Yugoslavia that he was active. And we are sure that Tito knew everything about him, and many other people knew about his past, but for one reason or the other, either didn't care, didn't bother, or, as some people say, tried to blackmail him or influence his politics.
Right. And one more question. I want to say to Valentin, this is not a question. Look at these chats. They're almost proposals of marriage on here. I mean, people loved your presentation, and they want to send it to their children and their grandchildren, etc. So I think you're making people, the kind of people who would watch this presentation, you're relieving them. You're relieving them that they are good people, good young people, who are actually not supported by the Austrian government, who are still going to go out and do something. You had a very fine response, as did Ruth, for her addressing very important questions. And here's the last question to you, Ruth. How did you get permission to construct the exhibit when Waldheim was president?
The exhibit was not constructed when he was president.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it was later. And actually, this was a decision by the city of Vienna to give me the permission. And the city of Vienna is governed by the Social Democrats, which is not the party of Mr. Waldheim anyway.
Right.
Good. So
Thank
now,
you very much for answering those questions.
good. Now we're just a few minutes before the end of the hour, and it's an opportunity for our speakers to leave our audience with whatever final thoughts they might wish to say. So Ruth, if we could start with you, are there some final remarks that you would like to say to our audience today?
No, thank you for having me. Thank you for having watched the film. And I hope that it gave you some insight or something, you learned something that you didn't know. I'm sure as I see you here, I'm sure all of you are very much aware of what happened in Austria at the time. It's many years ago already. And I hope the film added up to that. Thank you.
Valentin, how about you?
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you, Ruth, for the film. I mean, it really was so great to see, as an Austrian, see Viennese people how they reacted on the Waldheim affair back then, and how you see similar movements still in Vienna in both directions. But I think the younger generation, especially, is more aware to restore a good image of Austria, and to be better than some of us were back then. So thank you so much, Ruth, for the great film.
Thank you, Valentin, for organizing all that, or for giving Olivia and Shulamit the idea and showing them the film.
No worries.
Actually, the film was released in the US. It has a US distributor and was shown on quite many festivals in the US and cinemas. Yeah.
Great.
So Shulamit, what would you like to say in closing?
I would like to say that history is never complete. We can't say we know everything that happened in ancient Greece, or everything that happened during the Inquisition, or everything that happened during the Holocaust. There's always more things to engage in. And Ruth has really opened up in a way that people can understand the story of Austria. And there's more to tell than just the fact that there was an Anschluss. There's a question still in my mind as to whether Viennese think of themselves as victims or collaborators and perpetrators. That's a problem that's throughout Europe. And maybe we'll make another film called Victims Or sometime. Ruth, I'm so happy to have met you, and I thank you very much. Valentin, I've already talked to.
I wanted to make a final point before I say goodbye to our speakers and our audience. And that is that the year 1986, which was the year of the Waldheim affair, was central also to the Sousa Mendes affair. The Portuguese government that had persecuted Sousa Mendes during his life continued to bury the story after his death. And his family, they were pleading for years, decades, to have Sousa Mendes honored in his home country of Portugal. He was honored by Yad Vashem in Israel in 1966. But it took the Waldheim affair, I think, in 1986 to move things. It was, so the Waldheim affair was June, July 1986, and that was the time that the US government became involved, not only with the Waldheim affair, but with the Sousa Mendes affair. They then tied the foreign aid of that year, the Portuguese foreign aid, to Portugal reopening the Sousa Mendes case. And so finally the case cracked open, and Sousa Mendes was finally acknowledged in his home country. The president of that country at that time, Mario Suarez, issued an apology to the family. He even apologized that same year for the Inquisition. And I think the Waldheim affair was the key that unlocked the Sousa Mendes case. So I find it quite interesting how those two
Interesting.
stories are linked.
Thank
I
you.
wanna-
That's very interesting.
I want to thank our wonderful panelists, of course, Ruth Beckermann, Valentin Hassler, our interviewer extraordinaire, Shulamit Reinhardt, and our audience that comes week after week. See you again next week and in the weeks to come. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.